A young black boy walks into a secure airport lounge. He has a badge, a dream, and a name, but all they see is a threat that needs to be removed. The sky was a canvas of chaos, painted with streaks of fire and smoke as Flight 237 descended in a spiraling inferno. Inside, passengers clung to hope, their faces etched with terror, while the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, a futile attempt to maintain calm amidst impending doom. This wasn't a scene from a movie. It was the harrowing reality that unfolded across the Midwest, a routine journey turned into a nightmare. Among the chaos, a young man named Javon Carter sat clutching a worn photograph of his family, his dreams of becoming a pilot seemingly reduced to ashes. But as the world watched in horror, Javon's story was just beginning, a tale of resilience, injustice, and the unyielding pursuit of truth. In a nation grappling with its own identity, where the lines between hero and villain blur, Javon's journey challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths. It's a story that forces us to ask, what would you do when the system designed to protect you becomes the force that seeks to destroy you? This is not just a story about a plane crash. It's about the collision of ideals, the descent into disillusionment, and the ascent toward redemption. Brace yourself for a narrative that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. The morning sun spilled across Detroit like a secret kept too long. It touched everything. The graffiti-covered bricks, the fogged-up windows of closed barbershops, and the rusted fire escapes hanging like forgotten promises. In this city, everything had a story. And so did he. Javon Carter, 18, stood on the cracked sidewalk outside his bus stop, watching light dance across the pavement. He wore the only suit he owned, pressed the night before by his mother, who had worked an overnight shift and still found time to leave him a note tucked into his lunch. Fly, son, even if they don't see your wings yet. He clutched a worn backpack with calloused fingers. Inside were 2 notebooks, a flight manual he'd practically memorized, and a copy of the Tuskegee Airmen with highlighted passages and bent corners. His dream wasn't just to fly, it was to belong in the sky. Today was the first day of his internship at Skylight Horizons, one of the most prestigious aerospace companies in the nation. The opportunity was rare, 1 slot offered to a public high school student in the entire state. Javon earned it with his essay, "Altitude Belongs to Everyone." But now, as he approached the company's headquarters, gleaming like a monument to ambition, his confidence trembled. The lobby was a cathedral of steel and glass. Polished floors reflected ceilings etched with quotes from aviation pioneers. Every wall was lined with sepia portraits, Wilbur, Orville, Lindbergh, Earhart, all white and distant. Javon's reflection hovered beside theirs like a ghost out of place. He approached the security desk, flashed his ID, and received a nod of approval. There were no words, just a scanner beep and a wristband. As he passed the turnstiles, he felt less like a rising intern and more like a trespasser. The feeling was familiar. His mentor for the program was Captain Rebecca Whitman, a veteran pilot known for her impeccable record and a reputation whispered about in break rooms and hallways. She met him outside the training floor with a handshake that felt more like a formality than a welcome. "You're the intern?" she asked flatly, eyeing him top to toe. "Yes, ma'am. Javon Carter. Don't touch anything unless told. Stay out of the hangars unless I say so. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." She walked ahead without looking back. As Javon followed, his sneakers silent on the tile, he passed rows of cadets in crisp uniforms, none of whom looked like him. He straightened his back, adjusted his bag, and kept walking. He'd learned long ago that you carried dignity, even when no one handed it to you. Across the floor, behind a camera, Ava Wilson was setting up for her next shoot. 26, bright-eyed and sharp-witted, Ava had been hired to produce a short internal documentary on youth inclusion at Skylight. What was meant to be PR fluff quickly evolved into something more. She noticed Javon when he entered the room, not for his clothes or skin, but for the stillness he brought with him, like a held breath. Over the next 2 weeks, she watched him through the lens. I watched as he listened carefully to every instruction, rarely spoke unless spoken to, and observed how others treated him, how Whitman talked to him as if he were a liability rather than a potential. While reviewing footage alone in her editing suite, Ava paused a clip one evening. Whitman was leading a safety procedure drill. Javon raised his hand and offered a technically accurate suggestion. Whitman's response was clipped and dismissive. "That's not your place to speak." The camera caught Javon's face, just for a second, the slight flicker of something breaking, quickly replaced by practiced neutrality. Ava rewound it. Watched again. The moment wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Outside the sterile walls of Skylight Horizons, Javon's life moved in rhythm with the city's slow pulse. Late bus rides home, dinner with his mother if her shift aligned, reading flight manuals in bed, quiet resilience, night after night. Yet each day he returned to that building, shoulders squared, mind sharp, refusing to shrink. Because flying wasn't just about cockpits, it was about freedom. It was about saying, "I exist. I belong. You cannot unsee me." One evening, after another long day, he found himself alone on the tarmac. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in molten amber. A plane roared above him, wheels tucked into its belly like a secret. He stared up, wind in his eyes, hope pressing hard against his ribs. In that moment, he wasn't just a boy from Detroit. He was weightless. And one day, he'd take the controls. Not just a plane, but of the sky itself. The morning had begun like any other. Routine checklists, a tour of the dispatch room, Javon silently absorbing every detail like a sponge. But by noon, routine had unraveled. "Quick change to the schedule," Captain Whitman announced, scanning her tablet without looking up. "I have to prep for a cross-country flight. Wait in the pilot's lounge. Don't touch anything." Javon nodded, grateful for the brief moment of quiet. He navigated the hallway maze until he found the authorized personnel-only door. His access badge beeped green, and he stepped inside. The lounge was a different world. Soft leather chairs, panoramic windows overlooking the runway, a muted documentary playing on a large wall-mounted screen. No one else was there. Javon chose a seat near the window. His heart slowed as he watched a Boeing taxi to the gate. The engines hummed like lullabies. He pulled out his notebook and sketched flight patterns, wing structures, and engine schematics. This, here, felt like belonging. 10 minutes passed. Then the door opened. Click. He didn't look up right away. When he did, he saw her. Captain Rebecca Whitman. Not in uniform. Not composed. Her eyes locked on him like he was a breech, not a boy. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded. Javon blinked. "You said, this is the lounge, right? This is for senior flight staff. Who let you in?" My badge scanned green. Whitman stepped forward, voice tightening. "I've had enough of this. Stay right there." She pulled out her phone. Not a call, a report. Javon's hands froze over his notebook. Something shifted in her tone, not just annoyance, alarm. "I need security in the lounge, now. There's a black male, unauthorized, possibly impersonating staff." Each word is sliced. Javon stood slowly, heart hammering. "Captain Whitman, I'm the intern. I didn't mean... You're not supposed to be here. Where's your supervisor? Who issued that badge?" "I have it right here." He reached for his lanyard, hands visibly shaking. But Whitman had already crossed the room. She snatched the badge from his chest, yanking the lanyard so hard it snapped. "Looks fake," she muttered. "It's not," Javon said, voice cracking. "Miss Celeste signed off. You're not talking to me now," she snapped. You'll explain yourself to security. The door opened again. 2 uniformed officers entered, hands already twitching at their belts. What seems to be the issue? He doesn't belong here, Whitman said. This could be a threat. A threat. The word echoed louder than the engines outside. Javon's voice was barely above a whisper. I was just watching the planes. They patted him down, took his bag, examined his badge under a flashlight. Someone from HR was called but didn't answer. A small crowd gathered in the hallway, whispers, eyes, phones half lowered, pretending not to stare. One of the officers turned to Whitman. We don't see any falsification, Captain. This looks legitimate. Whitman narrowed her eyes. Then the system failed. Another silence. Heavier. Javon said nothing, not because he was unsure, but because he knew that whatever he said wouldn't matter. Not yet. That's when the twist hit. Excuse me? Came a voice. Calm, low, firm. Everyone turned. Celeste Smith stood in the doorway, heels clicking on tile. Her presence froze the room. Her eyes scanned the scene, the badge in Whitman's hand, Javon's slumped shoulders, the officers standing too close. What happened here? She asked, but her tone said she already knew. Whitman straightened. He was in the lounge without clearance. Celeste nodded once. And you thought this warranted a security call? Whitman faltered. He refused to explain himself. Celeste turned to Javon. Mr. Carter? I was sketching aircraft, he said quietly. You said observation was part of the internship. Celeste held out her hand. Whitman hesitated, then dropped the badge into her palm. She examined it. Badge issued by my assistant. Clearance verified. No infraction logged. Internship orientation explicitly grants lounge access when accompanied or instructed. Then, softer, but only slightly. Did you ask him any of that before escalating? Whitman's mouth opened, closed. The silence burned. Celeste turned to the officers. You're dismissed. They didn't argue. Celeste walked to Javon and, in full view of the lounge, pinned the badge back to his shirt herself. Her hands didn't tremble. Then she turned to the room. For anyone unsure, Skylight Horizons does not profile our future. We invest in it. Her voice held no fire, but all the finality. She placed a hand on Javon's shoulder. You good? He nodded. Barely. But something had cracked open not just between him and Whitman, between the company and its reflection. The video hit 100,000 views before Javon even got home. Shot from a blurry hallway phone, the clip captured everything. The shouting, the badge being yanked, the arrival of security. And then, most striking, the moment Celeste Smith appeared like a storm in heels, her voice low, her words razor sharp. Skylight Horizons does not profile our future. We invest in it. By sunset, the clip had gone viral. News anchors debated it. Podcasters analyzed it. Twitter exploded. Some called Javon the intern who broke the system. Others painted Whitman as a misunderstood veteran caught in a tense moment. But beneath the noise, something more powerful was moving. A question that wouldn't go away. How many other Javons had there been? Celeste sat in her corner office, the skyline dark behind her. She didn't blink as the legal advisor read headlines from her tablet aloud. Silent sabotage, bias in the cockpit. Flying while black? Skylight's culture under fire. Outside her glass walls, teams were scrambling. Public relations drafting statements, HR pulling personnel files, security cross-referencing access logs. But Celeste didn't want statements. She wanted the truth. Find everything, she said. Every complaint, every ignored email. I want names, patterns, and silence. I want that on the record, too. That night, Javon didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, the hum of Detroit traffic outside. His phone buzzed non-stop. Old classmates, strangers, journalists, even someone from the New York Times. His mother peeked in, eyes full of quiet fear. "You okay, baby?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Do you want this to go away?" He thought about that, about how part of him wanted to disappear, to wake up and pretend none of it happened. But deeper than fear was fire. "No," he said. "I don't." The next morning, Ava Wilson showed up on his porch. She held a camera bag in one hand and coffee in the other. "You ready?" "For what?" "To finish the story." They set up in a quiet park under the roar of overhead jets. Ava adjusted the mic. Javon cleared his throat. He didn't cry. He didn't lash out. He told the truth. "I was there to learn, not to be interrogated. But when someone pulls your badge off like a lie, it's not just a job they're questioning. It's your worth." The footage was raw and unscripted. By noon, it was edited and posted as Echoes and Evidence, an intern's flight through bias. And once again, the internet shook. But this time, Skylight responded. Celeste convened a press conference, not behind closed doors, but in the company hangar, beneath the shadow of a half-built aircraft. She stepped to the mic. "I built this company because I believed aviation could bring people closer. But along the way, we let altitude become an excuse for arrogance. We ignored what we didn't want to see." She paused. "What happened to Mr. Carter is not isolated. We have failed to make the cockpit and the path to it a place of equity. That changes today." Behind her, banners unfurled. Equity in Flight Initiative, anonymous reporting line, new internship protections, bias audits, training overhauls, and then, "Effective immediately. Captain Rebecca Whitman is suspended pending formal investigation. All personnel found contributing to a hostile environment will be reviewed. This is not a witch hunt. This is accountability." The hangar echoed with stunned silence. Then, applause. Javon watched it all from home. His inbox was flooded with both love and hate. Some called him brave, others are a liability. But what mattered wasn't the noise. It was the momentum. That week, a group of interns, mostly students of color, formed the Flight Forward Council. Celeste gave them full access to redesign onboarding. Ava followed them with her camera, chronicling every voice. Javon was offered the chance to lead it. He hesitated. "Why me?" he asked. Celeste looked him in the eye. "Because you were the spark. Now you get to be the architect." He accepted. Not for vengeance, for vision. Progress, for all its promise, rarely comes without its share of backlash. 3 days after the press conference, Skylight Horizons was caught in a storm fiercer than any weather advisory had predicted. While some celebrated the company's bold response, others, shareholders, veteran staff, and conservative pundits, were far less enthused. The first whisper came from inside. An anonymous memo began circulating through the upper ranks. It didn't name names, but its message was clear. This company is bending to political correctness, sacrificing decades of excellence for optics. By the time it hit the internal Slack channels, it had already been shared over 200 times. In the break room, an engineer muttered to another, "So what? Now we have to tiptoe around interns?" A pilot, 1 year from retirement, scoffed, "I flew through Iraq and Afghanistan. You think I'll get lectured by an 18-year-old who cried on Twitter?" Javon, meanwhile, could feel the air shift. People smiled tightly. Conversations paused when he entered a room. Some praised him to his face and quietly deleted him from group chats. And then there were the emails. They came in waves, some supportive, others venomous. "You'll never be a real pilot. Affirmative action puppet. Hope you enjoy ruining careers, Snowflake." He stopped reading them after the 6th one, But he couldn't unread what they'd already done. It didn't help that Captain Rebecca Whitman had decided to fight back, publicly. She appeared on a morning cable show known for its hardline leanings. The host introduced her as a decorated pilot wrongfully humiliated by woke mob hysteria. Whitman, dressed in a navy blazer and wearing a solemn expression of indignation, nodded. "I've given my life to this field, to be portrayed as a villain because I followed security protocols. It's devastating." That young man entered a restricted area. I didn't know who he was. Race had nothing to do with it. Javon watched the clip from Ava's apartment. The screen glared white-hot. Her words echoed like static in his chest. He wanted to yell, to punch something, to argue, but instead, he said nothing. Ava paused the video. "You okay?" Javon looked away. She knows what she's doing. She's reframing it, making me the threat again. "She's not the only one," Ava added, pulling up a headline. From intern to instigator. Did Javon Carter go too far? He slumped deeper into the couch. Maybe I should have walked away. Maybe all of this is just noise. Ava leaned forward. You didn't cause the noise. You revealed it. That's different. Still, doubt gnawed. That evening, Celeste called him into her office. She stood by the window, phone in hand, voice taut. "There's a petition," she said. 12% of the senior pilots signed it. They want your internship terminated. They say you're a liability to morale. Javon blinked. "Are you considering it?" She turned slowly. "I didn't bring you here to coddle egos, Javon. But I also didn't bring you here to be destroyed." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying this fight just got harder, and you need to decide how far you want to go." He hesitated. "If I leave, they win." Celeste stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If you break, they win." Outside the window, a plane lifted into the darkening sky. Its lights blinked steadily, indifferent to the storm below. The next day, Ava's latest video dropped. This time, it didn't feature Javon. It featured Whitman. But not in the way she expected. Ava had obtained footage from internal skylight recordings, a routine review of pilot debriefings. In one clip, dated 6 months before the lounge incident, Whitman could be heard making a snide comment about HR's diversity parade when referring to a new black hire. It wasn't explosive. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The video cuts to former interns speaking anonymously about their experience under Whitman. One recounted being told to stick to customer service, and another shared being routinely excluded from simulator training sessions. The title of the documentary? Flight Path, What We Don't Say at 35,000 Feet. It trended within an hour. Now, under pressure from both sides, Celeste made the call official that evening. Captain Rebecca Whitman was no longer suspended. She was terminated. The company released a formal statement citing a pattern of behavior inconsistent with our mission, our values, and our future. The backlash was immediate. Lawsuits threatened. Unions rumbled. But something had shifted. This time, Javon wasn't the one on trial. This time, the system was being cross-examined. As he left the Skylight building that night, a janitor in an old Horizon jacket gave him a nod. "Keep flying, kid." Javon smiled, just slightly. He wasn't sure if things were getting better. But for the first time, he was sure they weren't going back. The morning after Captain Whitman's termination, the Skylight Horizon's headquarters felt like a different planet. Not quieter, not calmer, just different. There was no official memo, no internal celebration, but the shift was palpable. The hallways were lined with uncertain stares, whispers tucked between elevator chimes, and coffee breaks that turned into conversations no one dared have weeks earlier. Javon walked through the building again with his badge proudly clipped to his collar. This time, No one yanked it off. But he didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because justice isn't just what happens to one person. It's what you do after the noise fades. Celeste Smith knew this better than anyone. She called an emergency summit with her executive team, the new Diversity Innovation Council, and, surprisingly, Javon. He sat at the end of the long table, a tablet in front of him, his name printed on the agenda under a bold heading, Future-Ready Culture Design. Celeste stood at the head of the room, sleeves rolled up, voice steady. Scandals don't build legacies, she began. Systems do. And right now, we're still running on a system built to protect comfort over equity. That ends today. She turned to Javon. You've lived the gap between promise and practice. We want your input. What needs to change? Javon blinked. Slowly, he straightened in his chair. Around him were department heads, engineers, and HR executives, people with decades of experience in the industry. He took a breath. Access, he said. Real access. Not just glossy brochures. Real training. Real support. And people, especially people of color, need to see themselves in this space. In the cockpit. In leadership. On every wall in this building. Silence. Then someone from HR nodded. Another from Flight Ops added, We can audit the simulator access history, see who's being blocked out, even unofficially. And just like that, something began. It started with whiteboards, then spreadsheets, then the task forces. Ava Wilson returned with her camera, documenting everything that happened. But now, the lens didn't just capture pain. It captured rebuilding. Javon was appointed youth chair of the council. It wasn't ceremonial. He had absolute authority, real deadlines. Every 2 weeks, he reviewed internship applications with the new recruitment team, adding a metric the company had never considered: resilience. He interviewed students from underserved schools, many of whom didn't even know aviation had a door they could knock on. I thought you had to be in the military or have rich parents to fly, one student said during a Zoom call. I didn't know they let kids like me near planes. Javon smiled. They didn't. But now, we do. The Horizons Rising program was born, an outreach initiative targeting inner-city schools and rural districts with zero aviation representation. Within a month, they had 38 applicants. By the end of the quarter, 300. Celeste also announced the Legacy Project, a complete rebranding of Skylight's public image. Gone were the monochrome walls of historical aviators. In their place came full-wall portraits of diverse flight crews, mechanics, engineers, and, yes, interns. And at the center of it all, a mural, 20 feet high, a young black pilot stepping out of a plane, hand outstretched, not to wave goodbye, but to hold the door open. It was Javon. He hadn't posed for it. The artist had painted it from a photo Ava captured, taken seconds after Javon gave a talk to a group of middle schoolers. He hadn't even known it was being used until the veil was pulled back in the lobby reveal ceremony. The building went silent as everyone stared. Javon stood off to the side, stunned. Celeste walked up behind him. You didn't ask for this, she said softly. But neither did the pioneers before you. Sometimes history chooses you. All you can do is live up to it. He couldn't speak. But in that moment, the weight on his chest eased. Not gone, but lighter. 2 days later, Ava released a short docu-series titled After the Sky Breaks. It showed what happened next. Not the scandal, but the scaffolding of something new. It featured interviews with junior staffers now mentoring interns, maintenance workers redesigning uniforms to be more inclusive, and female pilots sharing how the company culture had finally shifted after years of microaggressions. In one clip, a retired black pilot, Colonel Howard Bell, walked through the new gallery. I flew C-130s before half the folks in here were born, he said with a deep chuckle. Back then, you learned to fly through turbulence, outside and in. Feels good to see someone else catching the tailwind. At the end of the final episode, Javon sat in the hangar, looking at a training aircraft. His voice, calm but determined, closed out the story. I don't want to be remembered for what happened in a lounge. I want to be remembered for helping rebuild the hangar. Fade to black. The press conference wasn't scheduled. It exploded. It started when Senator Douglas Granger, chair of the Aviation Oversight Committee, and known for his razor-sharp interviews and old-school values, appeared on national television. I support diversity, he began smoothly. But let's be clear, aviation is not a social experiment. We can't afford safety theater disguised as inclusion. He leaned forward, voice like oil on steel. And I'm concerned Skylight Horizons is lowering standards for optics. The interviewer nodded, and just like that, the narrative shifted. Headlines followed. Woke wings? Is equity undermining aviation? Javon Carter, symbol of change or corporate token, commentators argued. Talk shows raged. A clip of Javon advising high schoolers was edited to sound naive and played on loop with smug commentary. Even Ava's documentary was questioned. Beautifully shot, one critic wrote, but lacks objectivity, over-glorifies emotion. Javon read every word. He shouldn't have. It ate at him. He thought he was ready. He wasn't. Then came the ambush. He was invited to a live debate hosted by the popular streaming channel The Nation Speaks. They framed it as a roundtable about diversity in aviation. Javon didn't know that they had also invited Captain Whitman's attorney, a conservative columnist, and a former FAA inspector skeptical of Skylight's reforms. When the lights hit, the gloves came off. Mr. Carter, the columnist began, lips curled in polite disdain, do you believe you were mistreated? Or did you just not like being told no? I was profiled, Javon replied, his voice steady but tight. And it wasn't the first time. It's just the first time someone got caught. The FAA inspector chimed in. So, what you're saying is, every white pilot who questions you is racist? Javon's hands clenched under the table. I'm saying there's a pattern, not an accusation, data. Then Whitman's lawyer slid a folder across the table. These records show Ms. Whitman's exemplary performance for over 2 decades. No bias complaints until your client. Javon didn't flinch. Or maybe no one ever listened until now. The host smiled, sensing blood. Across America, the segment lit up comment threads. But something unexpected happened, too. A second live stream began to trend. It was Celeste Smith. No set, no lights, just a quiet office. Her eyes are tired but unwavering. If standing for inclusion makes us political, so be it, she said into the camera. If it makes us vulnerable, then we were never secure. I hired Javon Carter because he was brilliant, and because no one should need permission to belong. She paused. And let me be clear. Skylight standards haven't dropped. They've been raised. Because finally, they apply to everyone. It was a masterclass in tone. Calm, firm, surgical. The tide began to turn. That weekend, Ava released unseen footage from the documentary. Pilots of color, immigrants, women, sharing stories of silent walls and invisible ceilings. They didn't shout. They just spoke, plainly. It was devastating. One clip showed a Latina pilot, now retired, holding back tears. I passed every test, but I never passed their trust. And I stopped asking why. The video hit 3 million views in 48 hours. Suddenly, Senator Granger's office was flooded with letters. FAA staffers began requesting bias review training, and other airlines requested copies of Skylight's new mentorship model. Javon? He mainly stayed silent, but his actions didn't. He showed up to every panel, every school, every simulator test. He didn't defend himself anymore. He just showed up. One morning, he received a letter from a small flight school in Mississippi. It read, We've had 7 black applicants this semester. That's 6 more than in the last 5 years combined. We owe you. Keep flying." He smiled, folded the letter, and slipped it into his notebook. Later that night, Celeste pulled him aside in the hangar. "You're being pulled from both sides," she said. "They'll try to make you their symbol, or their scapegoat." "I'm not either," Javon said. Celeste nodded. "Good. Be a pilot. That's more dangerous. You'll fly above them all." The walls still had the same peeling blue paint, same flickering lights in the hallway, the same cracked trophy cases from a decade ago, covered in dust but still standing, like stubborn dreams. Javon Carter paused at the entrance to Lincoln High School, his old school, his first runway. The metal detector buzzed faintly as a guard waved him through, not because he didn't belong, but because the guard recognized him. "Back already?" the guard asked with a grin. Javon nodded. "Different kind of flight today." The hallway swallowed him in echoes. Lockers clanging, shoes squeaking, a burst of laughter from somewhere down the hall. He passed room 103, Mr. Phelps's science class. He paused. That was the room where he'd first sketched airplane wings into the margins of his notebook. Back then, Mr. Phelps had glanced at his doodles and said, "You're smart, Carter, but maybe dream a little more realistically." Javon hadn't said anything then. He did now. "Guess this is realistic enough," he whispered, walking on. In the auditorium, students shuffled into plastic chairs, murmuring, texting, slouching with the boredom only teenagers could master. Most didn't know who was coming. Some didn't care. Until the lights dimmed, and the screen flickered on. A quick montage, planes slicing across sunlit skies, snippets from Ava's documentary, and at the center, him, Javon, not acting, just existing, laughing and working and being seen. Then the video cut, and the spotlight swung toward the stage. He walked out, not in a suit, not in a uniform, just Javon. Hoodie, sneakers, calm eyes, and every step carried the weight of everything he'd lived. For a moment, silence. Then someone clapped, then more, until the sound swelled into something he hadn't expected. "Welcome." He approached the mic, adjusted it slowly, hands steady. "I used to sit where you're sitting," he began. "Back row, head down, hoping no one called on me." A few students smirked, some straightened in their chairs. "I didn't grow up with pilots in my family. Didn't even know how to pronounce Boeing at first. I just knew I wanted out. Up. Anywhere." He paced slightly, not rehearsed, but natural. "I applied for a program at Skylight Horizons, wrote an essay about how the sky doesn't have gates. Turns out, I was wrong. It does. They're just invisible." The room grew quieter. "And when I walked through one of those gates," he continued, "someone tried to shut it behind me, said I didn't belong. I was lost. But I wasn't lost. I had just never been allowed in before." He paused. "Once you get through, you realize you've got 2 choices. You can keep walking, or turn around and open that gate for the next person." A teacher in the corner wiped her eye. A student in the front row leaned forward, eyes wide, phone forgotten. "I'm not special," Javon said. "I was scared. Still am sometimes. But I didn't let that stop me. Because the sky isn't a gift. It's a challenge. And if I can get up there, so can you." When he finished, there was no thunderous applause. Not yet. Just stillness, reverence. A pause long enough to mean something. And then the clapping began again. This time it didn't stop. Afterward, a line formed, not for autographs, for conversation. A girl asked about scholarship applications. A boy said he'd always loved engines but thought flying was for rich kids. One student, quiet and nervous, handed him a notebook. Inside, sketches of airplane wings, scribbled designs, and a note that read, "I didn't know I could be this." Javon smiled. "You already are." Back in the hallway, the principal approached him. "You gave them something we haven't had in a long time." "What's that?" Javon asked. "Proof." Just before he left, an old classmate showed up. Tyrone, once the loudest in class, always in detention. "You still flying, bro?" "Every day," Javon said. Tyrone nodded. "I dropped out in junior year. Thought this place didn't mean anything. But now," he shrugged, "maybe I just needed to see somebody beat it." "You still can," Javon replied. "Sky's still there." Outside, Ava was waiting by the parking lot. She had filmed none of it. Didn't need to. "That," she said, "was the moment the story stopped being about you." Javon nodded, gaze lifting toward the horizon. "No. That's when it started to be about us." And in the distance, a low rumble filled the sky, a plane lifting off, carving a path through the clouds, reminding everyone who heard it, the gate is open. The documentary was intended to be brief, just a story about a boy who loved planes. However, after Ava released the first 10 minutes online, something unexpected occurred that no one could have predicted. It exploded. First, it spread across student forums, then education blogs. From there, it leapt into the inboxes of journalists, then newsrooms. And then came the storm. Local news picked it up as "injustice at 30,000 feet." National outlets followed with headlines like "Flight Program Accused of Racial Profiling" and "The Future of Aviation Has a Color." The footage of Javon being questioned, doubted, sidelined, not with violence, but with 1,000 micro-wounds, resonated deeper than anyone expected. By the end of the week, Celeste Smith, CEO of Skylight Horizons, was called to testify in front of the Michigan Senate Subcommittee on Education and Workforce Equity. And sitting behind her, wearing a calm suit and quiet eyes, was Javon. He wasn't asked to speak, but his presence said enough. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. One, aggressive and sharp-tongued, pushed through the crowd. "Ms. Smith, isn't this overblown? Isn't this just another feel-good story turned witch hunt? Some say this is identity politics in a pilot's uniform." Celeste looked directly into the camera. "Some things only feel overblown when they don't happen to you." Inside, the room was packed. Legislators leaned forward, and the public gallery was standing room only. Live stream numbers climbed into the hundreds of thousands. A large screen behind the panel replayed snippets from Ava's documentary. The clip where Javon asks, "Why are you only asking me these questions?" The silence that follows. The weight in his voice when he says, "I just want to fly." Senator Amelia Price, a former civil rights lawyer turned policymaker, spoke next. "This isn't just about one boy. This is about a pattern. The FAA reports show a 68% underrepresentation of black pilots in training programs nationwide. That doesn't happen by accident. That's design, or at least neglect." The air was tight with tension. Then the twist came, not from Javon, Ava, but Captain Nora Harris. She stood up in uniform, decorated, poised. A 30-year aviation veteran, once one of the first black women to fly commercial routes out of Detroit. She hadn't spoken publicly in years. "I trained under a system that told me I was lucky to be allowed in the cockpit. That silence was the price of survival," she said, her voice clear. "But silence didn't get Javon here. Courage did, and that courage needs to be met with change." The room fell into a stunned hush. After the hearing, Ava's team released the full documentary. Within hours, it hit 2.3 million views. Then came the real turbulence. Conservative pundits accused Skylight of succumbing to the woke mob. Comment sections erupted. Petitions circulated to remove Captain Whitman permanently and defund the mentoring program entirely. But at the same time, something unexpected grew. A coalition of aviation professionals, engineers, retired military pilots, and educators released an open letter titled, "The Sky is Big Enough for All of Us." It was signed by over 12,000 people in 48 hours. Javon was invited to speak, not just in schools, but also at tech conferences, aviation summits, and even a panel at the United Nations Youth Innovation Forum, where his story was used to launch a global scholarship initiative for underrepresented youth in aerospace fields. A major tech company approached Ava and Javon to co-create an immersive VR simulator for flight preparation, accessible in low-income schools across the United States. The program's new name? Gate Open. However, while progress surged forward, backlash also emerged. Ava was doxxed. Celeste received death threats. And Javon, barely 18, was now the center of a national debate about race, gatekeeping, and dreams. Late one night, he sat alone on the roof of his apartment, staring at the sky. The stars were out, indifferent but beautiful. Ava joined him, handing over her phone. "Read this," she said. It was a message from a boy in rural Alabama. It said, "I showed your documentary to my mom. She cried. I didn't think someone like me could ever be a pilot. Now we're looking up flight schools. Thank you for existing." Javon didn't reply, just sat with the words. Let them land. Then he whispered, "Maybe this isn't turbulence. Maybe this is just takeoff." Javon Carter returned to the neighborhood not as a visitor, but as a symbol. The streets hadn't changed much. Same corner store with the faded snacks and soda sign, same basketball court with one broken hoop, same windows covered in cardboard instead of glass. But the way people looked at him had changed. He was no longer the quiet kid with airplane drawings in his math book. He was the one who'd made it out. Or so they thought. A group of teens lingered near the court, dribbling a worn-out basketball. One of them, a tall boy in a red hoodie, narrowed his eyes when he saw Javon approach. "Aye, ain't you that flight dude?" he asked, not unkindly. Javon nodded. "That documentary, they showed it in school last week," the boy said, wiping sweat from his brow. "I thought it was fake." "It wasn't," Javon said quietly. Another boy stepped forward. "So what now? You gonna build a runway out here too?" The tone was half joke, half dare. Javon smiled, not dodging the question. "No, I'm not here to fly over this place. I'm here because this was my runway. Still is." They stared at him, confused. So he told them the truth. About how scared he'd been. About the cold stares. The invisible walls. The weight of trying to represent more than just himself. And about the moments he almost quit. A silence settled between them. One of understanding, not judgment. Then one of the boys, the smallest of the group, asked, "So why'd you come back?" Javon looked around, the cracked sidewalks, the sound of a siren somewhere in the distance, the mural of Rosa Parks peeling off the community center wall. "Because someone has to," he said, "and I figured it might as well be me." Later that evening, he visited the community center. Inside, folding chairs had been set in a circle, not for a speech, but for a conversation. Mothers, fathers, teachers, kids, elders. Everyone came. The room buzzed with cautious energy. Some were proud. Some were skeptical. Some were just curious if the rumors were true. If this boy who once handed out flyers at the gas station had changed the course of aviation policy. Javon stood in the center. No stage, no spotlight, just presence. "I'm not here to inspire you," he began. "I'm here to work with you." Someone scoffed in the back. "They only call you now because you're famous." Javon nodded. "You're not wrong, but I didn't wait for their invitation. I came because I still live with what this place gave me, the good and the hard." A woman raised her hand. She wore a nursing uniform, exhaustion in her eyes. "My son wants to be an engineer," she said. "But we can't afford tutors or prep classes. Every scholarship asks for things we don't have. Robotics camps, STEM competitions. What can we even do?" Javan stepped toward her. "What if we build something here? What if kids didn't have to leave their block to see themselves in tech? In flight?" Heads turned. "You mean, like a program?" someone asked. "No," Javan said. "Like a movement." Over the next hour, ideas poured out. A flight club, coding nights, a mentorship network, and a community-based aerospace hub in the heart of the neighborhood. No permission needed. Just believe. That night, as Javan walked outside, Ava caught up with him. "You were different in there," she said. "I was home," he replied. She studied his face. Older now, not in years, but in the weight of his features, in clarity. "You're turning into something bigger than the story," she said. "I'm turning into the person I needed when I was 16, he answered. Later, as he sat alone on the hood of his car, a notebook in his hand, he began sketching. Not airplanes this time. Blueprints. He drew a community hangar, a space with computers, a wall of black aviators, past and present, a simulator corner, a library, a sign at the top. "The gate stays open." The stars blinked overhead like runway lights. He didn't look away. He just kept drawing. The dedication ceremony was held on a wind-brushed Saturday morning. A modest crowd had gathered beneath a white tent pitched beside the old vacant warehouse on Jefferson Street, now reborn. Where rusted doors once clanged in silence, now gleamed polished glass. Where graffiti had covered walls in protest, now murals stretched high in celebration. Black aviators, engineers, children with paper planes, dreams in motion. Above the main entrance, golden letters spelled it out. "The gate stays open." Javan Carter stood before the podium, dressed not in a suit, not in a uniform, but in the signature navy blue jacket of the Flight Mentorship Program, embroidered with his name, and below it, one word, Founder. Cameras clicked. Drones hovered overhead. News vans from Chicago, D.C., and even London lined the curb. But Javan wasn't speaking to them. He was talking to the kids sitting cross-legged up front, the ones holding model planes, the ones he used to be. "I used to think flying was about getting away," he began. "Getting away from poverty, from judgment, from being looked at as if I didn't belong. But I was wrong." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "Flying isn't about escape. It's about perspective. It's about rising above, not to leave behind, but to see further, to reach back, and to lift others." Applause swelled like takeoff. Behind him stood Ava Wilson, camera in hand. Her documentary, now acquired by a central streaming platform, had just received an Emmy nomination. But today, she wasn't filming. Today, she was witnessing. To the left stood Celeste Smith, still CEO of Skylight Horizons. Still sharp, but different now. Humbled. She had survived a corporate firestorm, undergone mandatory bias training herself, and restructured the company's entire internship framework to prioritize access, equity, and safety. Some called it redemption. Others called it overdue. Javan had simply called it necessary. Beside Celeste stood Captain Nora Harris. She had returned to flight briefly, just long enough to take one final cross-country route, joined by a co-pilot she had picked, Javan. It had been symbolic and unforgettable. After the ceremony, kids were ushered inside for the first public tour of the new Skybridge Center. They touched simulators, met black and brown aerospace professionals, and signed up for weekend STEM sessions. A 6-year-old boy whispered, "This looks like magic." Javan leaned down. "It is," he said, "but it's real." That evening, back at home, Javan sat with his mother at their repaired kitchen table, no longer wobbling. She'd taken the day off from work just to see him speak. Her eyes were tired, but proud. "You built it," she said. "Not alone," Javan replied. She reached over and squeezed his hand. "You know what I remember?" "What?" "You were 6. You drew a rocket ship on your bedroom wall in crayon. I was so mad." He laughed. "You made me scrub it off with a toothbrush." "I did," she said, "but I left one part, the words you wrote underneath." He frowned. "What did I write?" She smiled. "I'm gonna go past the clouds." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, a plane hummed overhead, this time not as something distant, but something familiar. In the months that followed, Javan traveled, not to escape, but to expand. He spoke at United Nations conferences on youth innovation, partnered with engineers in Brazil on portable aviation labs for low-income communities, and traveled to Nairobi to launch a program at a school built from repurposed aircraft parts. Everywhere he went, the message stayed the same. The sky belongs to everyone. And yet, he never stopped coming home. Detroit remained his base. The Skybridge Center became a national model. His old neighborhood saw its first community-led aviation curriculum adopted by public schools. And on the third Saturday of every month, Javan taught a class himself, flight theory, but also courage. One Saturday, as he wrapped up a lesson, a teenager approached him, quiet and awkward, his eyes avoiding his. "My name's Mason," the boy said. "I don't talk much, but I saw you on TV, and I—" He hesitated. "I never thought someone like me could fly." Javan put a hand on his shoulder. "You just did," he said. And in that moment, Javan understood. This was legacy, not fame, not headlines, but the gentle, lasting ripple of one person's belief passed to another. That night, back on the roof of his apartment, he looked out over the city. The skyline twinkled like a circuit board. Distant runways blinked red and white in rhythm. Ava sat beside him. She was working on a new project now, about food deserts in the Midwest, but she still checked in, still reminded him that stories never end. They just change shape. "You think the sky has no limit?" she asked. Javan didn't answer right away, just smiled, slow and sure. "Depends who's holding the door." He leaned back, arms behind his head, eyes fixed upward, not in search of escape, but in recognition. Of all that had been broken, of all that had been built, and all that was still waiting, just past the clouds. Sometimes, the loudest stories begin in silence. Javan's journey was never about one gate, one airport, or one moment. It was about every voice that's ever been ignored. Every dream was dismissed before it had a chance to fly. But today, you heard it. And now, you can't unhear it. The real question is, what will you do with it? We don't just tell stories. We open them up. We hand them to you. Because stories alone don't change the world. People do. If this one moved you, share it. If it challenges you, discuss it. And if it reminded you of someone who needs to see it, don't wait. Hit subscribe to our channel and drop a comment below. We read every word. We carry every echo. And we're building the next story with you. Thank you for listening.